You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
Businessman, deal maker, billionaire, playboy, comedian, con artist, liar, fascist, bigot, xenophobe, homophobe, transphobe, literally Hitler.
He's literally Hitler!
Teflon Don, dear leader, 45, President of the United States of America. Donald Trump has been many things to many people over the years, one of, if not the most polarizing figure in human history. Just the mere murmur of his name will instantly cause your half-cocked uncle or lesbian aunt to tailspin into their respective radical diatribes. If you're an average person, it's almost impossible to have an opinion on the man, as everything that's said about him is either filtered through the lamestream media, a conservative Twitter anon who turns out to actually be into gay pup play, or a non-binary manic depressive who's currently on hormone replacement therapy, or The View. How did a beloved billionaire celebrity TV host become the leader of the free world? And why can you no longer wear a red hat in public without being catcalled by cat ladies? All of this will be revealed and more, because this is the story of Donald J. Trump. Act 3, Making America Great Again. Just a quick note before we move on, this is actually the second part of a multi-part series. I'm breaking it down because it's taking me much longer to make this video than I thought, so you can check out the first part here. You see it on your screen. It's been live for a while. It covers his early life up until his political career, and that's it. I hope you enjoy the video. When Trump was elected for the first time, I remember a lot of people repeating the talking point that, how stupid are people that they're gonna elect someone who just became a politician? He's only been a politician for like a few months, or something to that effect. Which I always thought was kind of a weird opinion, because don't politicians suck? All my life, all I've ever heard from people is how the government doesn't care about you and politicians are criminals that are stealing your money. Then in comes this outsider who, up until this point, the entirety of the country was pretty fond of. And what does he run on? Draining the swamp of all corruption. You'd think Trump would have been the guy. But suddenly, something switches, and the majority of the country are treating the government like their mommies and daddies, who are just there to protect and nurture them. Then in comes the Donald, ripped, muscles glistening in the sunlight. What I was trying to get at is I find it fascinating that Americans have this reputation for being like these gung-ho cowboys. But when presented with the option of having a president who seemingly checks all those boxes, essentially like the middle finger personified, Americans turned their backs on him, scoffed, and rejected him. He was really the only candidate in years who ran on the idea of scorching all the corrupt rot in the executive branch, or at least the politician who had done so successfully, which is completely separate from what his actions might be. I think the book still isn't closed on that one. He has another 4 years to get that done. I'm just saying that's what he ran on. But before we get into this MAGA era, let's rewind just a little bit. Despite being new to politics when he made his first run at King of the World in 2016, Trump had been on the political periphery since the 1980s. Toying with the idea of running, but no one, including myself, taking it seriously.
For some people, the ultimate goal in life has been becoming the President of the United States. Would you like to be the President of the United States?
I really don't believe I would run, but I would like to see somebody as the President who could do the job, and there are very capable people in this country.
I've seen many claim that Trump was a lifelong Democrat until he ran against them in 2016, but that doesn't seem to be totally true as far as I can tell. He was a registered Republican up until 1999, when he then joined the Reform Party, who self-describe as a radical centrist, fiscally conservative, and a populist party. The same party that Jesse the Body Ventura, if you remember from Act 2, had been a part of when he was elected for governor of Minnesota in 1998. In the year 2000, Trump had actually made a brief run at office, with Oprah being pegged as his pick for VP.
Let's get into some things. The Reform Party, by its name, means reform. You will be leaving, if you run this, you're leaving what, the Republican Party?
I'm a registered Republican. I'm a pretty conservative guy. I'm somewhat liberal on social issues, especially health care, etc. But I'd be leaving another party, and I've been close to that party.
and his campaign ran on the ideas of having better international trade deals, eliminating national debt, and achieving a universal healthcare system. Due to infighting within the party, his biggest proponent, Jesse Ventura, ended up leaving the Reform Party in early February of 2000. Without a tag team partner in his corner, Trump bowed out of the race on February the 14th of that same year. A few days later, on February 19th, he wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times, giving more details as to why he decided to leave the Reform Party, stating things like the ousting of his closest confidant, Jesse Ventura, and the sense that the American political system is really set up to be a two-party system and gatekeeps anyone who isn't a Republican or a Democrat. He also wasn't a fan of the company that the party was keeping at the time, saying, quote, "When I held a reception for Reform Party leaders in California, the room was crowded with Elvis lookalikes, resplendent in various campaign buttons and anxious to give me pamphlets explaining the Swiss Zionist conspiracy to control America," end quote. Meaning, he felt that there were anti-Semitic views permeating the voter base. To further back up that claim, he also singled out 3 specific party members who he also didn't jive with: Lenora Fulani, David Duke, and Pat Buchanan. Lenora Fulani is a psychologist and a political activist who, according to the New York Times, she wrote in 1998 that the Jews, quote, had to sell their souls to acquire Israel and had to, quote, function as mass murderers of people of color to stay there. She also worked closely with and followed the teachings of philosopher Fred Newman, who was a Marxist/socialist type and was the leader of a therapy cult. Yes, you heard me. So she was kind of like a left-wing extremist if I had to boil it down. David Duke was the Grand Wizard of the KKK. Pat Buchanan, on the other hand, is an author and a politician who, according to the ADL, quote, repeatedly demonizes Jews and minorities and openly affiliates with white supremacists. The allegations against him are that he downplayed the numbers in the Holocaust and defended some of the German soldiers in World War II, allegedly. But I flat out just don't trust anything coming from the ADL, and I've seen people that I follow online, like comedian/Jew David Smith, recommend multiple of Pat Buchanan's books, praising him for his writings, such as The Death of the West and Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War. Before we move on, there was one more thing I wanted to mention from that New York Times opinion piece that Trump wrote. A passage I will read in full because I found it a moment of self-awareness that is simultaneously quite prophetic. Quote, "I seriously thought that America might be ready for a businessman president, someone with an eye for the bottom line, someone who has created thousands of jobs and isn't part of the inside the beltway buddy system. I also thought Americans might be ready for straight talk and that they would find an unscripted candidate appealing." After leaving the Reform Party, Trump changed his political affiliations to the Democrats in August of 2001. This isn't much of a stretch though. Trump seems to have always been financially conservative, but by his own accounts holds socially liberal views. Remember, this was in the before time when the Democratic Party wasn't yet infested with far left extremist types. He considered running again in 2004, but it's unclear for which party. But this notion was more of a thought he was playing with than an earnest attempt to run. In 2008, this one blew my mind, he actually endorsed Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primaries. Yes, he at one point actually endorsed his arch nemesis, though he did switch his endorsement to conservative candidate John McCain in the general election. After the 2008 election, he jumped ship back to the Republican Party in 2009. Trump seemed to be gearing up for another run at the crown in 2012, giving a speech at CPAC in February 2011, which is like Comic-Con for conservative dorks. At the time, this was seen as Trump's introduction as a conservative candidate, though he backed out of the race on May 16, 2011, and later endorsed Mitt Romney. People viewed his double dutch with the 2012 race as a play to boost the ratings of The Apprentice. In reality, he more likely had to rebound after what many believe was the inciting incident that led Donald J. Trump on his quest for the crown.
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?
Obama and Trump had been feuding for years, as Trump had been publicly calling into question Obama's legitimacy as President of the United States due to where he was born. Initially, I had always known this conspiracy to be pegged to Donald Trump as the originator, but to my amazement, he was not the first Obama opponent to bring this up. So to get a little more context, we're going to have to rewind once again to 2008. During the Democratic primaries of that year, young up-and-comer Barack Hussein Obama was competing to be the Democrat nominee against a former president's wife, Hillary Clinton, aka the Heel Dog. Obviously, we all know the outcome of this race. Obama became the Democrat nominee and then later went on to become President of the United States. When Obama began slipping away from Hill Dog in the primaries, rumors that Barack Obama wasn't actually an American would reverberate through various circles of Hillary supporters, aka the Dog Pound. In 2011, Politico put out an article which implied that it was the Hill Dog herself who was leaking this conspiracy theory as a way to put into question the legitimacy of Barack being able to win the election, as one of the requirements to be President of the United States is to actually have been born in the United States. This would later be debunked by follow-up articles from factcheck.org, PolitiFact, and more. The problem with these debunking articles is that their arguments can be summarized to "There's no proof that it came from her, even though we concede it did come from the Dog Pound." But that's not suspicious at all, so don't worry about it, buddy. So these debunking articles don't really prove or disprove anything. The conspiracy theory that called into question Barack Obama's place of birth came to be known as the birther conspiracy. Hillary may have weaponized it against Barack back in 2008's presidential race, but the birther claim actually dates back 4 years earlier than that, in 2004. Barack Obama was running for Senate at the time, with the first mention of the birther allegations coming from an opponent of his named Andy Martin. His claim was that in 1991, Obama had this promotional booklet made about him, which in it states that he was, quote, born in Kenya and raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. This was around 3 years post 9/11, so Americans were still pretty pro-America and anti-Middle East at the time. So even though you don't need to be born in America to be eligible to become a US senator, Andy used the claim of Barack Hussein Obama being a Kenyan-born Muslim as a way to paint him as an outsider who doesn't have the American public's best interests at heart. Obama, brushing off the claims, never ended up producing a birth certificate, which only fueled the conspiracy. Regardless, Obama won the Senate and everyone forgot Andy Martin existed. Flash forward back to 2008, and the Hill Dog totally didn't use her dog pack to drudge up the birther claim as a way to character assassinate Obama. But once again, Obama wins the primary, and for a time, everyone forgot the Hill Dog existed. Flash forward one final time, back to 2011, Trump takes a half-hearted run at the presidency in February, and on March 23rd, Trump, who is still a well-liked celebrity by the way, makes his historic appearance on The View. To illustrate how well-liked he was, Whoopi Goldberg, who in present day is one of the biggest Trump detractors, was being friendly with him and joking around in the interview.
Excuse me, I'm a Republican. George Bush, he gave us Obama. I'm not a big fan of George Bush. I'm not a fan of Obamacare.
Let's not talk about who gave who,
I know,
baby,
Whoopi.
because
I don't think I'm going to get Whoopi's vote.
If you did, let me just ask, if you did be...
And she likes me. She even put me in her movies.
I was just going to say.
She put me in her movies, right? A long time ago. And how much did I charge? Nothing.
Like they say in the
It was a freebie.
During this interview, they asked Trump what he would do if he ran against Obama. He then brings up the birther conspiracy and demands to see Obama's birth certificate.
I want him to show his birth certificate. I want him to show his birth certificate. There's something on that birth certificate that he doesn't like.
Oh my God.
That's a terrible thing.
Whoopi, I'm telling you.
Whoopi,
I love you. I'm telling you.
I love you too. I think that's the biggest pile of dog mess I've heard in ages.
This, understandably for racial reasons, rubs Whoopi the wrong way. Moreover, Trump activated the conservative base, creating a possible political nightmare for his nemesis, Obama. Because when Andy, whatever his last name was, brought it up, the general public never really heard about it because even I, who just mentioned his full name, didn't know who he was. When the Dog Pound brought it up, Hillary is a liberal, so the conversation lived and died on her side of the party line. But when Trump, a beloved celebrity billionaire businessman and member of the opposing political party brought it up on national television, now the story got legs. Whether or not you believe him, it doesn't matter, because if you're Fox News, you go, "Did you hear Trump slam Obama on The View? We need an investigation immediately. The Democrats have lied to you once again. Everybody go to your local Walmart and buy as much ammunition that your credit cards will allow, because democracy is dead." And if you're CNN or NBC, you're saying, "Did you all see what Trump said about our dear leaders on The View? What a despicable, detestable, and deplorable thing to say about the sitting president of the United States. I bet if he was a white president, he wouldn't have said that. What a racist. You all need to go to your local liquor store and buy all the alcohol, rags, and lighters your credit card will allow, and burn down the city you currently live in, because democracy is totes dead." The uproar Trump caused in the media in March of 2011 led to Obama finally releasing his Hawaiian birth certificate to the public on April 22nd as a way to try and cool off the media circus surrounding his first birthday. Listen, I'm not saying the birther conspiracy is true, but honestly, upon looking into it, there's a lot of weird things about this whole birth certificate story that kind of don't add up. Again, not saying it's not true, but there is 100% some weirdness around this thing. For instance, in 2009, then CNN President John Klein had found that all of Hawaii's paper birth certificates had been destroyed, meaning the one Obama released in 2011 was a copy and not the original document. The certificate that was released was a PDF and seemed to have like active layers on them, meaning if you open the PDF in Photoshop, you can move the layers around individually, which make it look like someone had constructed this birth certificate, like it was made in Photoshop, which is pretty crazy. To be fair, it seems like the layers are just to enhance the text to make it more legible, but still weird nonetheless. There's also a ton of inconsistencies in Obama's origin story, including the pamphlet I mentioned earlier that states he was born in Kenya, and his grandmother being interviewed in 2008 who said he was born in Kenya. Like I said, a lot of weirdness surrounding Obama's birthplace, but the evidence doesn't mean there's proof. Without proof, you can't actually prove someone's guilty. The rabbit hole on this is much deeper than I'm letting on, but there's an equal amount of evidence that debunks at least some of these claims, such as his grandmother being misquoted in the interview due to a mistranslation. So 8 days after his appearance on The View, on April 30th, 2011, Obama made his ill-fated speech at the Correspondence Dinner, lampooning the Donald for trying to tear apart his political career during his race for second term as president. Trump may have been this well-liked celebrity at the time, but I can only assume that those who worked in Washington, D.C. now felt a little differently about the man. This is just my speculation, but I gather that Trump was seen as not being part of the political in crowd, let's say, not part of the machine, and being ridiculed by the political elites behind the scenes. I mean, fair enough. Imagine playing basketball in the NBA, and then someone who's 30 and who never played in college or never even played in high school joins your team, elects himself captain, calls you a gay pussy, and then he says he's going to single-handedly get the team a ring in his first year despite never having played a game. If you were even a low-tier bench player, you'd be like, whoa, buddy, get a load of this guy, am I right? Well, actually, that was probably the whitest way I could have said that. In this analogy, it'd be something closer to,
"Hey, bruh, this cracker tripping for real.
And then you'd peel off in your scat pack blasting Slimed In by Future.
Go against the laws 1,000%. Squeezing on style 1,000%.
Now, whether or not you're a Trump guy, I think it's pretty fair to say that he's maybe not a megalomaniac completely, but definitely like an image-obsessed person. Someone who wants to be adored by the masses and go down in history as this beloved icon. Like having golden statues erected in his image and have a national holiday named after him type of vibe. So when Obama takes shots at him publicly with a room full of the most powerful people in the country laughing at him, making him the butt of the joke, I think it's pretty clear this ignited a fire in the man. Again, I think both sides of the aisle can agree that Trump is a vindictive SOB who doesn't like to lose or be embarrassed, especially publicly. This transformed Donald J. Trump, beloved New York real estate magnate and game show host, to an ironclad political cyborg. Reading the room, everyone who was so quick to laugh at him because in their eyes, this well-liked reality TV star was just cosplaying as a politician who only got into the room because of his money and celebrity status, needed to be put in his place. It's a pack of pit bulls reminding the one pug they let hang around the "you not like us." Between 2013 and 2015, Donald Droid remained mostly dormant, popping his head up and taking pot shots here and there at the re-elected Obama. The New York Republican Party circulated a memo suggesting that Trump should run for governor of the state in 2014, but he declined as his ambitions were much grander. And on June 16th, 2015, Donald J. Trump publicly announced his candidacy for President of the United States of America.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Going back and watching his announcement speech, I completely get it. Like within minutes, I understood what made him so popular. Up until this point, any other politician would have gone up there and said, well, this is my opinion on immigration policy, and this is why I think terrorism is bad, and this is why I'm here to make your life better. Just listen to Trump speak for a few seconds.
And every time we give Iraq equipment, the first time a bullet goes off in the air, they leave it. Last week I read 2,300 Humvees. These are big vehicles were left behind for the enemy. 2,000, you would say maybe 2, maybe 4? 2,300 sophisticated vehicles they ran, and the enemy took them. You're right.
Do you get what I mean? You can say Trump's rhetoric is bashful and uncouth, and fair enough, I won't argue, but I think it's 1,000% more effective. This speech is the equivalent of talking to your rebellious 17-year-old like an equal, like an adult, making him feel like you're on the same level, even though he's clearly not, because this way he'll be more receptive to whatever guidance you're attempting to bestow on his dumb ass. I've come to learn in my adult life that everyone has their own variation of the English language. For example, you don't speak to your parents the same way you speak to your friends, and you don't speak to your friends the same way you speak to your boss, etc. You adjust which words you use, your cadence is slightly different, your choice of topics. What you're doing subconsciously is adjusting your version of English to more closely match theirs, which makes it easier for both yourself and whoever you're talking to understand each other. Here's a piece of advice. If you feel like you're often being misunderstood, or perhaps even want something from someone, like let's say you're trying to get a raise from your boss, adjust your speech to more closely match theirs, and from my experience, you'll get a better reception. Conversation inherently has this element of broken telephone to it, as it essentially is like the practice of translating your thoughts into spoken words and then uploading them to whoever you're talking to, and then they would have to download whatever you just said, translating it back into their own thoughts. To simplify, a conversation is my interpretation of your thoughts and your interpretation of my thoughts, with spoken English, if we're speaking English, being the connecting bridge between the two. To steer this back to Trump's campaign announcement, if a large part of a politician's job is translating their thoughts and ideas to the public with the intended goal of making the public understand their point of view, then what better way for them to understand the message than to bring their language down a notch and speak to people like a person? Trump, in my estimation, though I'm not a political historian, was the first politician not to act like a politician, and that's very alluring considering everyone hates politicians. If I can jump back to that New York Times piece he wrote in 2000 after leaving the Reform Party, quote, "I seriously thought America might be ready for a businessman president, someone with an eye for the bottom line, someone who has created thousands of jobs and isn't part of the inside the Beltway buddy system. I also thought Americans might be ready for straight talk, and they would find an unscripted candidate appealing." Performance aspects of the speech aside, the actual contents of the speech covered topics like foreign trade deals, specifically there being a deficit with Japan and China, the border crisis, saying that Mexico is sending criminals over the border, lowering unemployment by bringing jobs back to America, ending Obamacare, stating that the current president spent $5 billion on a website which doesn't actually work, and draining the swamp of political corruption that is plaguing the government. If you're keeping track, these are basically all the same talking points he ran on in 2016, 2020, and 2024, and also pretty much the same political views he had in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. But at the same time, I don't think America was really ready to make America great again. After his very first outing on June 16th, Trump would already begin to be attacked by the lamestream media. As I'm sure you know, since the day he announced, all the way up until right now, when you're watching this video, there has been a non-stop onslaught of attacks from the media trying to assassinate his character. During his announcement speech, Trump said this about Mexican immigrants.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting.
The following few weeks were a little rough for Donald. Both the left and the right took aim at him, labeling him a racist and xenophobic. Many of his business partners like NBC, Macy's, Univision, and NASCAR cut ties with him. He was dropped by The Apprentice and replaced with Arnold Schwarzenegger for its 15th and final season. I told you before, we don't talk about that last season. The polls at the time were mixed, to be honest. He was alienating moderate voters, but his hardline stance did also build the foundation to his loyalist core MAGA supporters. If I'm being unbiased and not pearl clutching about his comments, he's not saying all Mexicans are bad people. He was speaking about illegal immigrants being criminals and being rapists. You could make the argument that it's only a small percentage of illegal immigrants that are violent criminals. Fine, let's say that is the case. One, that's not a justification for illegals to be allowed to stay, especially if there's a possibility that they're violent gang members. And two, that wasn't the conversation that was being had by the media. They took his statements, skipped over the fact he was explicitly talking about illegals and how easily open borders policies can be gamed by malicious actors, and they claimed he was saying all immigrants were these horrible monsters, when that just simply wasn't true. This was just his first media appearance, his very first day on his path to becoming emperor of the free world. It seems like every single step further down this path would be mired in controversy. I could dive deeply into each and every single one of these points in great detail, but I'm not a history podcast, nor am I Trap Lore Ross releasing 4-hour videos. Granted, I actually have no idea how long this one's gonna be, but whatever. No, that would totally kill the momentum and the pacing of this video. So let's do it the only way I know how, montage style. July 18th, 2015. Trump got into hot water for some comments he made about John McCain, a Silver Star recipient after surviving the horrific conditions as a POW in Vietnam. John ran against Obama and lost in 2008 and was now serving as a US Senator. Critical of Trump's immigration rhetoric, saying that it was, quote, very hurtful, and suggested it, quote, fired up the crazies. Trump had this to say about him in response.
Oh boy, Trump makes my life difficult. He had 15,000 crazies show up. Crazies. He called them all crazy. I said they weren't crazy. They were great Americans. These people, if you would have seen these people, I know what crazy is. I know all about crazies. These weren't crazy.
Trump later stated that he respected military heroes, but never apologized. Throughout the summer of 2015, Trump began his tried and true tactic of giving his opponents funny nicknames, starting with low energy Jeb Bush.
Bush is failing. He's a very nice person. Highly low on energy. He really is. He's low. He's low.
May have an HSA in some companies don't. But I think the norm on
July 2015, then Texas Governor Rick Perry dropped out of the race after a disastrous campaign in 2012, forgetting the name of a government agency.
Commerce, education, and the, what's the third one there? Let's see.
He made a second run in 2016, rebranding himself with glasses, and after calling Trump a cancer of conservatism, the Donald had this to say in response.
I see Rick Perry the other day, and he's so, he's doing very poorly in the polls. He put glasses on so people will think he's smart. And it just doesn't work. People can see through the glasses. But he's got the glasses, the whole deal. Oh, Trump, huh?
July 21st, 2015. Trump had gotten into a heated exchange with Senator Lindsey Graham. This led to Graham calling him a, quote, jackass during a CNN interview.
That he's a jackass.
Really?
Shortly after, at a rally, Trump retaliated by doing this to Senator Graham.
So Lindsey Graham says to me, please, please, whatever you can do. You know, I'm saying to myself, what's this guy, a beggar? He's like begging me to help him with Fox and Friends. So I say, okay, and I'll mention your name. He said, could you mention my name? I said, yes, I'll mention. And he gave me his number, and I found the card. I wrote the number down. I don't know if it's the right number. Let's try it. 202-228-0292. I don't know. Maybe it's, it's 3-4 years ago, so maybe it's an old number.
August 6, 2015, the first GOP debate of the season, which saw all the conservative candidates take center stage to battle it out to see who would emerge party leader. The debate was being moderated by journalist/commentator Megyn Kelly. Trump, as I've mentioned, had this long-standing feud with comedian Rosie O'Donnell and had made some nasty comments about her in the past. These comments found their way into a feminist movement called the War on Women, so during the debate, Megyn Kelly piggybacked off this movement and tried to press Donnie T. I'll let you decide how that went.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
Trump's comedic timing disarmed Megyn's line of questioning. Megyn tries to reframe the accusation, broadening it back to him making those type of comments towards other women, but Trump pivots, saying that society is tired of being politically correct. That same night, on August the 6th, Trump called Senator Rand Paul ugly.
His visceral response to attack people on their appearance, short, tall, fat, ugly. My goodness, that happened in junior high. Are we not way above that? Would we not all be worried to have someone like that in charge of the nuclear arsenal?
Mr. Trump.
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there. That I can tell you.
But Jake,
August 19th, 2015, at a New Hampshire rally, the topic of birthright citizenship came up, which is granting citizenship to anyone born in the US despite whether or not their parents are illegal aliens. Trump said, quote, "We're the only country dumb enough to have a birthright citizenship. It's a magnet for illegal immigrants. They come here, have babies, and those babies are anchor babies, and we're stuck with them." Legal scholars took to CNN and NBC, saying deporting them would violate the 14th Amendment, which states, quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens." This means if Trump wanted to abolish birthright citizenship, he would need to amend the 14th. September 9th, 2015, Trump called former Hewlett-Packard CEO and fellow Republican nominee ugly in a Rolling Stones interview, saying, quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that? The face of our next president?" November the 12th, 2015, Trump went full Kendrick Lamar, getting into a beef with opponent Dr. Ben Carson, who in his autobiography admitted to having anger issues as a boy, such as hitting his mom with a hammer at 8 or 9-ish and attempting to stab his friend at 14.
He took a knife and he went after a friend and he lunged that knife into the stomach of his friends, but lo and behold, it hit the belt. It hit the belt and the knife broke. Give me a break. Give me a break.
During a CNN interview, he was asked about the mocking of his attempted stabbing story, and Trump had this to say.
He said he's pathological. Somebody said he has pathological disease. Other people said he said in the book, and I haven't seen it, I know it's in the book, that he's got a pathological temper or temperament. That's a big problem because you don't cure that. That's like, I could say, they'd say you don't cure, as an example, child molester. You don't cure these people. You don't cure a child molester.
To be clear, all these events allegedly took place as Dr. Ben Carson was like an adolescent or like a teenager rather. So, I don't know, calling into question the stabbing story, that's a tactic, that's fine, whatever, sure. The molester analogy is wild, like that's a social nuke. November the 21st, 2015, a personal favorite. At a South Carolina rally, Trump mimicked a New York Times reporter.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said.
It turned out that he was retarded. Major whoopsie. Jokes aside, the journalist Serge Kovaleski is physically handicapped, but his brain does work, so you're not obligated to feel bad for him or anything. Secondly, this clip was taken out of context. Prior to the rally, Trump had said thousands of Muslims were celebrating on rooftops in New Jersey mere hours after 9/11. His source was an article Serge wrote back in 2001. Kovaleski, not knowing he has disability privilege, didn't want people to think that he was Muslim phobic in 2015, so he said Trump was totally lying and that the article would never state such a thing. This This made Trump look racist instead of Serge because Donald was the easy dog pile. That 2001 article doesn't mention thousands of Muslim people were dancing on rooftops, but it does clearly state that Muslims were celebrating in New Jersey when the towers fell on rooftops. So Trump is super petty and can't let this go and attacks Serge at the November 21st rally. I don't believe Trump had any idea what Serge looked like. He only just knew the article. If you rewatch this clip in that context, it seems like he's just mocking a lying journalist who didn't want to admit that Muslims were celebrating dead Americans on 9/11 in 2001 on top of rooftops in New Jersey.
Right after a couple of good paragraphs, it's talking about northern New Jersey, draws the prober's eye, written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said. This was 14 years ago. They didn't do a retraction.
December 7th, 2015. Following the San Bernardino terror attack, where a Pakistani couple, Saeed Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik, shot up a government building, racking up a kill streak of 14, but luckily didn't have time to call in their AC-130. Trump called for a, quote, total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering into the United States. Upper middle-class white liberals were pissed on behalf of Muslims. February the 1st, 2016. Trump implicated that GOP opponent Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK after Trump was tricked by a tabloid drama bait type article in the National Enquirer. That was a little hyperbolic. To be more fair, the National Enquirer did publish a photo of what looked like Ted Cruz's dad hanging out with Lee Harvey Oswald, but after this incident blew up, they came out and admitted to fabricating the story. Trump used this to imply that Ted Cruz's dad killed a sitting US president as a jab at Ted, and then Trump played the victim after the media was like, that's a crazy thing to say. In February 2016, during the debates, Trump nicknamed Senator Marco Rubio Little Marco.
Don't worry about it, Little Marco, I will.
All right, well, let's hear Big Don. Donald.
Don't worry about it, Don't worry about it, Little Marco.
He also nicknamed Ted Cruz Lion Ted. February 21st, 2016, Trump told the story of General John Pershing killing Muslim terrorists with a bullet dipped in pig's blood.
Early in the century, last century, General Pershing, did you ever hear? Rough guy. And they had a terrorism problem. And he caught 50 terrorists who did tremendous damage and killed many people. And he took the 50 terrorists, and he took 50 men, and he dipped 50 bullets in pig's blood. And he had his men load his rifles, and he lined up the 50 people, and they shot 49 of those people. And the 50th person, he said, you go back to your people, and you tell them what happened. And for 25 years, there wasn't a problem, okay? 25 years, there wasn't a problem.
Muslims were upset, also probably white women. Trump lost in the Iowa caucuses at the beginning of the primaries in February, but rebounded and won the next three. Come Super Tuesday on March 1st, an event that sees 11 state caucuses being held at the same time, Trump picked up another 3 victories. April 25th, 2016, at a rally in Rhode Island, Trump mocked Governor John Kasich for being a fatty boom batty.
Now you look at Kasich, I don't think he knows what, did you see him? He has a news conference all the time when he's eating. I have never seen a human being eat in such a disgusting fashion.
Come May, Trump secured a landslide victory in Indiana, forcing his last 2 competitors, Ted Cruz and John Kasich, to drop out of the race. There's probably a bunch of stuff that I missed out on, but I believe I gave you enough to convince you that Donald Trump's run to be the 2016 GOP nominee was legendary. I understand if you don't want your politicians to feel like they're just messing around at the podium, but whether you're MAGA-pilled or believe that trans women are women, Trump undeniably has comedic timing. Him on the debate stage is essentially a crowd work special. His command of the audience hadn't really been seen at that level since Germany, 1933. All politicians were vain, scared of not appearing to be the good guy, afraid of losing votes. They wanted to have the image of being an upstanding citizen who is there to serve you and make your life a little better. While Trump was like, hold my beer, I'm gonna go call Rand Paul ugly real quick. Trump was an outsider who didn't speak or act like a politician. But I think what's even more unconventional than those 2 things in and of themselves, and something I don't think any politician has really done before, maybe on a small level, but not to the point that this is, Trump was the first politician to ever have legitimate merch drops. I guess there's also Germany 1933. God damn it. Marketing and politics isn't some oddball buddy cop type of relationship. The two have been working hand in hand with each other since the beginning of time. One of the earliest examples is Julius Caesar putting his face on the gold coin and naming the best salad after himself. Henry VIII branding himself the Renaissance king. Louis XIV had his signature catchphrase, "L'état c'est moi," I am the state in English. My boy Adolf had a fun hand gesture, a logo that looks like a ninja star, and a best-selling novel. Every modern presidential campaign has some sort of slogan attached to it. Yes, we can. Remember Obama? Powerful. It got people hyped, but none was greater in recent memory than Make America Great Again. MAGA wasn't just a catchphrase, it's a movement, it's a way of life. And being the Shark Tank-like figure that Trump is, he started this branding campaign with the iconic red hat. Trump did for the red hat what Adolf did for his wacky mustache. Trump changed that color of baseball hat forever. There's countless videos of people being accosted in public for wearing even plain red hats that have no attachment to the movement at all. Kanye West was one of the most beloved musicians, and wearing that dang MAGA hat undoubtedly set him on his anti-Zionist path that he's on right now. He was instantly ousted by his peers for simply supporting a presidential candidate. The hat may be the most iconic piece Trump released, which immediately lets everyone around you know what you think the future of America should look like. But it didn't stop there. T-shirts, sweaters, jammies, flasks, beer koozies, keychains, Yeti tumblers, white hats, pink hats for the ladies, gold hats, black hats, comically enlarged hats. If there's a product that can be cheaply made by Chinese children, ironically, then there's probably a MAGA logo plastered on it for pennies on the dollar.
Trump flags everywhere. Got me thinking, it's like nobody parties under the Biden banner. People party under the Trump flag. I've never seen someone just get down under a Biden flag.
Oh, that would suck so bad. Holy shit. That would be so... I mean, it'd be really funny. Get a nice Kamala flag, too. That's a party.
That would be tight.
A Harris Walls flag. Just getting wrecked.
Just having so much blasting NPR and be like, that's actually very important.
I never thought of it like that.
I didn't think about that. Just kissing a guy.
He didn't stop at physical merch either. We're talking NFTs, remember those? He even went so far to rug pull his most ardent supporters with a meme coin. But merch will only get you far in a movement. Just because you're selling Amazon quality attire on a website, that doesn't guarantee sales. And that alone certainly won't win you the crown of the free world. So why were people so willing to spend their disability checks on crappy gas station hats? I think it's time we take a look at the MAGA conservatives. As I mentioned, Trump was an outsider who both liberals and most conservatives seem to hate. With the rise of Trump during the GOP debates, this created a split in the Conservative Party, creating a new sub-faction which came to be known as MAGA conservatives. Initially, MAGA supporters tended to be people who were more further right, the type of person who's already not too trusting of the government as a whole. These people are separate from like far-right extremists. They're, you know, the kind of America first, they took our jobs type of conservatives. Going back to the far right for a second, I'd be lying if I didn't say they weren't aligning themselves with MAGA at the time. But just like his time spent in the Reform Party, he would condemn these extremist types. Also, his relationship with Israel kind of soured them, so we'll discuss this a little later. The reason I bring them up now is that anyone who identified as MAGA in the early stage did all get lumped together in the far-right category, which simply wasn't true. It's like saying all liberals are far-left progressive extremist types, which is also not true. Well, it started becoming true, and it's the very reason why so many liberals have been distancing themselves from the party more recently. Not only were normal lefties lumped together with the extremists, but the extremists started taking over the party, which made the left toxic. Therefore, more moderate people jumped ship because they didn't want to be associated. This is what was happening with MAGA in the early days. They were being painted as an extremist group, but instead of making the movement toxic and scaring off moderates, the party continued to grow and grow. So what was different with MAGA? Why were people willing to be socially ostracized by joining the quote, toxic far-right party? Let me paint a picture for you what it was like to be a guy in the 2010s. There were years of needless, never-ending infinity wars, regardless of which political party was in power. And they were in countries that literally no one could even pronounce. Vampiric politicians were draining the lifeblood of the economy. The far left was rising up, gaining power, and using their weapon of choice, progressivism, to beat down normal people into compliance by demonizing you for having the gall to call one of your friends a gay retard. Doctors couldn't tell obese patients that they needed to lose weight because fat people are now considered healthy. The economy is in a death spiral, crime is on the rise, and locking the perpetrators up is framed as being racist. The middle class are being prescribed opiates at an alarming rate. Half the kids have vaccine-based autism. Human interactions are in the process of being converted into contactless iPhone apps. The list of words you can't say is unreasonably long and growing. The list of words you have to say don't even sound like English. Hollywood is more obsessed with creating a diverse multiverse than they are with telling good stories. Video games are being developed by trans right activists. Anything resembling masculinity is deemed to be toxic. The only way women are allowed to experience anything sexual without them being considered the victim of a harrowing abuse story is if it's behind a paywall. And if you even think about raising your hand to question any of this, you will be fired, removed from all social media platforms in unison. Your family will stop talking to you, and your kids will be coerced into having gender reassignment surgery. You're disconnected from the matrix, and the only people you're left to interact with are the manosphere and groypers. All these things, and more, have been bubbling underneath the surface. It's like it's noon and you just finished your coffee after you had drunkenly eaten Taco Bell at 2 a.m. the night prior. The country is ready to paint a toilet bowl. When you're a normal straight guy who doesn't want to be forcefully sissified by America's HR department, and you hear a billionaire celebrity with a Russian model wife tell you that he's going to take this dying cesspit you live in and make it great again, and call Rosie O'Donnell a fat pig, you're freaking locked in. Another large part in creating Trump's cult of personality was this notion that Trump was memed into office. I don't think 4chan and Reddit played a significant role in transforming Trump into the most talked about person on the planet, but he did use poster logic to make sure that you couldn't keep his name out of your mouth. Part of this was through iconography like his MAGA merch. Another large part of this is from his legendary Twitter fingers. He was the first politician to destroy the connecting bridge between politician and mystery. Pre-social media politicians, or I think even in a grander sense, celebrities in general, had an element of mystery to them, partly due to there not being a direct line of communication to the fan base that really existed. I'm talking like, you know, the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Like social media didn't really exist then. But I think more importantly, the mystique behind them was also a way of protecting them. It's the reason why Hollywood elites have never been more hated than they are now. Everybody loved Robert De Niro until extremely recently when we realized he wasn't actually like a hardened mobster or a sociopath cab driver or whatever he was in Cape Fear. I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen that movie. We realized he's an empty-headed actor who says what he needs to say to keep getting hired.
I'm gonna say one thing, fuck Trump.
2016 celebrities hadn't discovered podcasts or realized you can talk like a person on social media. I'd say the majority of them were living in the dying days of anonymity, where their social accounts still felt like they were highly curated and moderated by a team. Trump would fire off tweets all times of the day with no PR team overseeing his every keystroke. Honestly, there's like infinity funny tweets out of this guy, including this slam against Hillary Clinton, him saying global warming is some Chinese proverb, him celebrating Cinco de Mayo with a taco bowl. I mean, he told the Duchess of Cambridge to start an OnlyFans after her nudes leaked. He told Robert Pattinson to dump Kristen Stewart after she cheated on him. He claimed to be the smartest person in the world. A pic from the 2000s leaked of his fat dumper playing tennis. And lastly, probably one of my favorites, he told Mexico they needed to build a wall to keep themselves out of our country. This is just a small sampling, and honestly, most of his spicier tweets come from like his post-presidency era, so we'll get into those when the time permits. Outside of his Twitter fingers, there were some other notable memes like the small hands thing. Marco Rubio had claimed he had tiny little digits in the debates, which further implies he's small penis gang. Trump detractors loved this one. In a town hall, he said he got a small loan of $1 million. This is something I covered earlier, so we'll just skip past this one. There's the 4D chess meme, which is more of like a Trump being a big brain type of template. And one of my favorites, him intentionally mispronouncing Obama's last name.
Obamna!
And it would later be paired with Biden's favorite beverage. Soda! The memes did not walk him into the White House by any means, but his inflammatory speeches made sure that the mainstream media were talking about him 24/7. The fun tweets and the memeable moments made him ultra relevant online with the younger crowd. And then pair that with a social climate where there was a very real attempt for the biggest voter base, white guys, to be beaten into submission by people who have 30,000 plus Reddit karma. 2016 was the breaking point for many, but winning the presidency takes more than clever branding and pissed off white guys. But we do need to actually take a look into his boring policies, so let's see what his idea was to make America great again. It's pretty clear Trump broke the mold. Politicians, in my opinion, were always thinking in the short term up until this point. You could say like dictator type governments tend to think in the long term like China, but you know, I'm saying in a free world, they tend to think in the short term. What do I need to get votes? If I say this, how will this affect the polls in the morning? What do I need to say to win over this demographic? And Trump just straight up didn't care about any of that. He kind of was just like playing the long game on everything. And I think if you actually look outside of all the funny stuff, which is actually just the stuff I care about when it comes to politics, that's why I like Trump, he's just funny. That's literally the only reason I like him. Outside of that stuff, I think if you actually take a look at his policies though, a lot of them are, they in the short term, they tend to, like the tariff thing, for instance, let's say, like short term, yeah, that would affect the country's economy negatively. But the idea of putting those in place is that long term, his ultimate goal is to bring American jobs back and restabilize the American economy. So why don't we take a little time to actually look at his boring policies? In 2016, these were essentially the policy he was running on. Immigration, which was building a wall around the southern border to prevent illegal immigrants from flooding in, which is a strain on the taxpayers, and keep out gang members and other criminals who bring chaos and destruction. The left wing's take on this was, diversity is good. If you disagree, you're xenophobic and racist. Trump is literally Hitler. When it comes to law and order, he wanted to crack down on crimes in the inner city and bring back stop and frisk. The left said, solving crime is racist. We need less police. Trump is literally Hitler, and I think we all know how that turned out. On the economy, he wanted to renegotiate what he viewed as bad trade deals like NAFTA and the TPP, while raising or imposing new tariffs with countries where there's currently a trade deficit like with China to protect American jobs. He also wanted to cut taxes for individuals and businesses, simplify the tax code, deregulate industry since there's a lot of red tape to cut through for these type of things, and invest in infrastructure. The left wing's take on this was, the long-term goal of creating American jobs will raise prices in the short term, money go down, price go up, you go homeless and get addicted to opiates and die, which is racist. On foreign policy, I think we all know Trump is an American first nationalist and wants to end the forever wars that are tearing apart Africa, West Asia, and South America. Also, he wants to defeat ISIS, which kind of contradicts his first point. The left were like, yeah, well, actually, we've been pro-war this whole time, even though we claim to be disgusted by being the world's self-appointed police force. Also, if you don't advocate for protecting refugee minorities by killing other refugee minorities, you're racist and xenophobic and transphobic. Energy and environment, Trump wanted to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement and extort America's domestic fossil fuels. Well, the world's gonna die in 6 months, so the government has to force you to buy a Tesla. And if you don't have a Tesla, you're a racist and a Nazi. I'm aware of the irony of that statement. Education, he wanted to promote school choice and reduce the federal government's role while pushing things back to the states. The left wing's perspective was, he wants to ban us from teaching your single-digit age kids about gay butt stuff. That's racist, fascist, homophobic, and he's a Nazi. On healthcare, he wanted to get rid of Obamacare and make a more free market-based system. The left said, he's taking away free healthcare that we got for you. He literally wants you to die. He must be a Nazi. And lastly, he wanted to drain the swamp. This is a big one. Everyone in the West pre-Trump collectively agreed that the government is corrupt and that they would want someone to come in with a hatchet and hack away at the rotting flesh that is the neocon, neo-dem, uniparty corrupt politicians. And of course, the left said, this is racist and bigoted, fascist, Nazi. Are you noticing a pattern here? The radical left-wing progressive types were saying that if you agree with any of Trump's policy, you are also literally Hitler, even though they were kind of just advocating for the very same things like a couple days ago. And the left-wing politicians, thinking in short-term goals, promoted this edict from the vocal minority because they were afraid of getting ratioed on Twitter. To be fair though, if you're a politician on like the left or the right, I actually can understand you hating Trump. It makes sense to me logically in my mind. Not only do his tenets go against what had been historically sold to the public, but he's also threatening to drain the swamp. I'm sure you know how cutthroat politics are. Even if you're a decent person who's trying to make a difference, you on some level need to play ball with your team. And if your team is telling you Trump is a reality TV show host who's coming into our house and telling us he's our boss and we're all fired before he's even spent a single day as a politician, I can understand why you're like, yeah, this isn't a hill I care to die on. I'll publicly bash Trump. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me was when the establishment uniparty types coordinated a reputation assassination campaign against Trump, how quickly the public bought into it. I mean, he openly stated he wanted to drain the swamp, and the left-wing people started defending the corrupt politicians because any idea that begins with Donald Trump must end with evil. Because Orange Man is bad. In 2016, you'd see the beginning stages of what would become to be known as TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. TDS is actually an evolution of the Bush Derangement Syndrome. This is something I just learned, which was coined in reference to President George Bush Jr. back in 2003. Resurfacing and being reappropriated by Trump supporters, essentially the term means that you've drunk so much of the Orange Man Bad Kool-Aid brand that your brain is incapable of championing anything he does, even if it's something that you stand behind. A current example is Trump in collaboration with Elon Musk and Doge, discovering billions of dollars in government spending being revealed as waste, fraud, and abuse. The fact that they found stuff, does that really surprise anyone? If this was 2013 and Elon helped out Obama, would Democrats be lighting Teslas on fire and carving swastikas into them to combat anti-Semitism while at the same time chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which at its core is not a very Jewish-friendly chant? The whole thing is illogical because people with TDS cannot and will not give Trump a win on anything. I mean, look at the opening passage of the TDS wiki page, for instance. Despite the usage of the term, syndrome suggests a medical condition. TDS is not an official medical diagnosis. No shit. Everybody knew. Nobody on the planet thought TDS was a real diagnosed syndrome. No one thought that. That's insane. And to further back up this statement, they even have like a reference point here, which points to this article. This doctor of psychology wrote an entire article detailing how Trump derangement syndrome isn't a real medical diagnosis. The type of individual that legitimately thinks TDS is a real medical syndrome, I don't believe they know how to read. Getting back on track, 2016 saw the beginning stages of TDS's development. Over the years, things like Gamergate, George Floyd, and the pandemic would pour gasoline all over the TDSers to the point where they are, again, lighting Teslas on fire and carving Kanye's favorite shape into them. And to get people on board this crazy train, all the government and the mainstream media had to do was not actually refute or debate Trump's policies, or even take the high road in response to his aggressive debate style, showing that they won't stoop to his level. No. What they did is something I like to call the Playboy Cardi effect. Just repeat a few words over and over again. Racist, fascist, KKK.
No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
No matter what he said or did, the response was racist, fascist, KKK. Trump says or does something the left should agree with, racist, fascist, KKK. It's the reason why rapper Playboy Cardi is so popular with the kids. Playboy Cardi is a rapper who says absolutely nothing on every song he's ever made. and half his bars are just repeating the same words over and over again. Your first time listening to him, you're like, I don't really get it. And then hours later, his voice starts to creep into your head. And then you start having these thoughts like, was he saying free throat or free throw? Free throat. I literally can't tell. He said it so many times and also so weirdly. Free throat. Nobody pronounces words like that. And then the next thing you know, it's hours later, it's nighttime, and you've been repeating free throw in your head all day. Free throw. He creeps into your mind like some sort of modern day Manchurian candidate program, priming you to be activated whenever you hear the sound of a gay vampire yelling at you over a ridiculously hard rage beat. But I guarantee you, if I'm ever in a room with Hillary Clinton and this thing turns on, my brain is going incognito mode. Cause you got it free throw. Basically, what I'm saying is that the CIA used the establishment uniparty government and the mainstream media to enact a modern version of MKUltra, rebranded to TDS to make you hate Trump and to stop asking questions about getting vaccinated, ingesting microplastics, child trafficking rings underneath Shakey's Pizza restaurants, and the Clintons' connection to pretty much everything that is evil and sucks. Which leads us to the next chapter of our tale. By May 3rd, 2016, Donald Trump successfully bullied his way into becoming the GOP nominee in the 2016 presidential race. And with America effectively being a two-party system, this meant that he was now going to be pit in the main event against the Democratic nominee, who is one of the most evil, unlikable, devious, dastardly, an individual with an attitude so nasty she makes Sexy Red look classy, with an aura so evil she makes Epstein look regal, morals at such a low bar she makes Peter Dinklage look like Thor. The bloodthirsty, the classless, the fat ass bitch, Hillary the Hill Dog Clinton. Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton is, by my account, the embodiment of Satan. Her pastimes include trafficking children in the basement of pizza chain restaurants, not only to use them as blackmail for black op billionaire Mossad agents, but also to harvest their organs for adrenochrome, speed walking, crossword puzzles, list making, and drone striking Middle Eastern people. Obviously, I'm being facetious. The only ones I can confirm are the speed walking and the crossword puzzles, and, you know, I was joking about the rest for legal reasons. But the point I'm specifically trying to make is that I don't believe she's a good person. She got her start in politics by sinking her cloven talons into the 42nd president of the United States and renowned pussy hound, Bill Clinton. Somehow she managed to use her interdimensional portal to hell sitting between her legs, aka her vagina, to spawn a human child named Chelsea. Demon pussy aside, after her husbando left office, the Hill Dog clawed her way into the role of Secretary of State during the Obama administration. Trust me here, her being Secretary of State and having a child will pop up shortly, so keep those facts in mind. When Obama was finishing out his final term as prez, Hill Dog announced her candidacy as Democratic nominee on April 12, 2015. Unlike Trump, who was duking it out with multiple opponents, Hillary really had only one other Democrat she was competing against, which was Bernie Sanders. The B-Man seemed like the favorite to win, and looking back at it now, a lot of people feel like Bernie had the election stolen from him. You see, the B-Man had a populist socialist platform, a man for the American people, like Trump, but also wanted free healthcare, universal basic income, free government handouts, socialism, etc. Bernie was particularly popular with the younger millennial demographic, who at the time were pretty much all left-wing. Bernie Bros was a pejorative term used by older Dems to belittle his supporters. It was a way of painting them as like frat bros who were trying to get liberal pussy. The dirtbag left was an adjacent term. Think Cumtown, pre-Yoko Ono iDubbbz, H3H3 when they were still living in New York. The good stuff, the 2016 vintage if you're a culture sommelier. I think this movement is encapsulated by the OK Boomer meme.
Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer.
Yes, this video was actually posted in 2020 during the next election cycle, but in my mind, she was the mascot for Bernie Bros. Suffice to say, B-Man had what felt like a grassroots movement. The Hill Dog, on the other hand, was your establishment, deep state, war hawk politician. She's a lizard person who was squeezed into a prosthetic skin suit by some off-the-books rogue CIA unit who's actually working for the Illuminati or whatever. Bill Clinton, George Bush Jr., Barack Obamna, and eventually Joe Biden are all a person who were pre-selected to be a puppet masquerading as a world leader, while the real people behind the scenes running the show are eating raw, uncooked babies, toppling governments, fomenting revolutions, and starting wars in any and every country that isn't ethnically Caucasian, except the Ukraine. But more on that later, I guess. So obviously Hillary had 3 times the financial support because she was the chosen one by the Democrat Party, which people felt put Bernie in an unfair disadvantage. There's other factors like leaked emails from the DNC, that's the Democrats, which showed bias against Bernie, and the debate schedule being moved to weekends where less people would tune in. But all of this just leads back to Hillary being the chosen one. With Trump winning in late May, the Hill Dog pushed out B-Man by the following month, setting up the main event between the two heavyweights, the quintessential political elite versus the outsider who is willing to call Ron Paul ugly on a debate stage. As the road to presidential mania in October began, Trump threw his first punch at Hillary in July. Fresh off announcing his VP pick, who was Indiana Governor Mike Pence, he'd use a fresh political controversy surrounding Hillary to attack her character. Back in 2012, when Hill Dog was Secretary of State, there was an attack on the US consulate in Benghazi, Libya. At approximately 9:40 p.m. on September 11th, no relation to the American one, around 120 to 150 Ansar al-Sharia militants stormed the consulate, overwhelming the defenses, leading to the deaths of U.S. Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and Information Officer Sean Smith. The CIA dispatched reinforcements from a nearby base, and this led to Phase 2 of the Ansar al-Sharia's plans, hitting the building with mortar strikes, leading to the death of 2 CIA operatives, Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods. After the 11-hour conflict, the smoke may have been settling in Libya, but back home, the fire had just started. As Secretary of State, Hillary would have been responsible for the security at the consulate in Benghazi. The now dead Ambassador Stevens had requested on multiple occasions to enhance the security and add more personnel to the consulate, but had been rejected by the State Department, aka Hillary Clinton, on every request. This placed her in the proverbial hot seat back stateside after the loss of 4 American lives. In response, Hillary tried to shift the motivations of the attack, saying that Ansar al-Sharia was not the terrorist cell who planned the attack on the consulate. She made the claim that the attack actually was an emotional response to a YouTube video that had been released sometime prior called Innocence of Muslims. The video posted on YouTube was labeled a short film. I really wish I could show you clips from it. This thing is a work of art. It's like watching a Neil Breen movie, if you're familiar with that, or maybe The Room by Tommy Wiseau. It's so low budget, poorly written, poorly directed, poorly acted. It's a slop fest that's so bad it is good. The reason I can't show it is that in the video, it depicts the Muslim prophet Muhammad as a gay pedo whose mother was a whore, which I'm sure is against YouTube's terms of services and probably the reason why the video's been removed. So to recap, Hillary claimed that the multi-phase attack on the consulate in Benghazi that resulted in the deaths of 4 Americans whose safety she was responsible for wasn't actually a planned attack by a militia group. It was actually 150 Muslim protesters getting a little rowdy and mortar striking an American consulate building because of a cartoonishly bad anti-Muslim YouTube video being released by an Egyptian director, by the way. So even though Hillary ignored all of the requests to fortify the building because the boots on the ground felt it would be vulnerable to an attack, all of that would not have made a difference because it wasn't a pre-planned attack by a militia. It was guys angry at a YouTube video. That was her defense. To be fair, I was being a little hyperbolic for dramatic effect, also because I'm just biased against Hillary, I'll be honest about that. A more charitable view of events is requests were denied to fortify the consulate, but they weren't directly rejected by Hillary. There was somebody else in the department. Though she was the head of the department that made that decision, so the buck does stop with her. But by no means she is 100% to blame for this. That's just not true. The attack which happened to the under-fortified base in Libya, while the country was in a revolution. So the bigger question really is why was America even there in the first place? matters, and what role did the CIA have in orchestrating this revolution, and what did they gain out of it? That aside, her claim was that it wasn't a terrorist attack, but protesters during this revolution were all of a sudden angry at a boomer-core anti-Muslim YouTube video essay. So the fallout from this is Hillary is placed in front of Congress a month later, who are interrogating her for trying to use a protest in response to an Egyptian-made Islam-exposed YouTube video instead of what was clearly a terrorist attack. But obviously, this hearing didn't bear anything fruitful. In March of 2013, a hacker by the name Guccifier leaked an email thread between Sidney Blumenthal and Hillary Clinton, where the Benghazi attack had been discussed. But the most important thing about this exchange wasn't who the email was being sent to or what was said, but where it was going. The email wasn't being delivered to hilldog666 at USA or whatever the official government email server is. The email was sent to hdr22 at clintononemail.com. This meant that Hillary had been using a personal email server for her communications and not the secure email address assigned to her via the government. This isn't illegal by any means, if I'm being fair, but one of the requirements if you're using a private email server is that backups of any communications must be done on government servers, which they were not. Also, not too long after the attack in 2012, she downgraded her backup security from something in-house to using Google Cloud. I know this because in May of that year, a committee called CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, requested Hillary's email records. They were told by the State Department that when they went to go look for her emails on the government servers, the search results said, quote, "No records found." So this leads to a House Select Committee being formed in the summer of 2014 to investigate Hillary's missing emails. Yes, that's a giant leap in time, but it's the government. These things move very slowly. By October 2014, the House Select Committee managed to put in an official request for all of Hillary's logs during her time as Secretary of State as part of the investigation. To be clear, this means that during the process of the investigation, Hillary was in complete control over the flow of information. Wow, I bet she never would have guessed that having an off-the-grid email server meant that nobody would be able to access her logs, and during an investigation, she was just in complete control over all of the information. Over a month later, on December 5th, Hillary's legal team obliged by delivering 30,000 emails as per the request, but also had deleted an additional 33,000 emails claiming they were personal and unrelated to government business. By March of the following year, 2015, the New York Times broke the story about Hillary's emails to the public. So Hillary gave a press conference at the UN to try and take some of the heat off of her. A couple of months later, the State Department, Hillary's squad, released around 300 of the Benghazi-related emails to the public to help further sweep for Hillary. But the Benghazi Committee, which is separate from the House Select Committee, released the Blumenthal emails a month later. These had been omitted from the State Department's 300 emails they released publicly, which implies that they were withholding emails from the public, again trying to sweep this under the rug for Hillary. Now, the FBI are like, "Hill Dog, what are you doing?" So they start an investigation to see if she's been mishandling classified documents. They're basically investigating her to see if she's been using Google Docs for all of her devious schemes. They sent her a list of phones and tablets that had been logged into that email server, her private email server, to try and help them recover some of these deleted emails. But in a major oopsie moment before this request had been made, Hillary did accidentally order her staffers to destroy all of their phones and tablets with hammers. You know, for like security purposes and stuff. Yes, Hillary's staff claim they routinely dispose of old hardware by smashing them with hammers. She claimed this is something she would do routinely with her staff, which is like, I mean, yes, destroying old hardware, I could see why for security purposes. That actually does make sense. Like that's definitely true. But like, if you know anything about technology, the way you dispose of a hard drive, something that has like data on it that might be like you don't want to get leaked out to the public, you don't do it with hammers. That's just stupid. Maybe a drill, like you could drill through like a hard drive. That actually kind of makes sense, but not a hammer. That is dumb. Moving forward, the FBI did manage to retrieve her email backups from a company called Datto in August of 2015 because she stopped using Google Drive by this time. While that was being sorted through, in October, Hillary was brought in front of the Benghazi Committee to testify in an 11-hour hearing. This led to nothing of note. Keep in mind that timeline-wise, like, we're creeping into the presidential primary season right now. The investigation bleeds into 2016, and in March of that year, the chair of Hillary's campaign, John Podesta, fell victim to a spear phishing attack, where an elite hacker group called Fancy Bear gained access to his email account. It was a Gmail account. More on this later. By July, the FBI were able to recover 17,000 of the 33,000 deleted emails from Dado's servers right as election season was heating up. Around 110 of the recovered emails were found to contain classified materials, but FBI Director James Comey, an Obama appointee obviously, said there was no evidence of intentional misconduct and recommended no charges, like 2 months before the presidential debate started. With Hillary now clear of all charges and securing a victory in the primaries over Bernie Sanders, she is now ready to take on the fight of her life. Before we move on to the next chapter, even though there were no smoking guns in the deleted emails, there were 2 email threads we need to discuss. The first was an email she had sent to her daughter, Chelsea. Remember when I randomly mentioned that like 10 minutes ago? Well, Chelsea had received an email from her mother the night of the attack on the US consulate in Benghazi, where Hillary stated that it had in fact been a premeditated Al-Qaeda style attack. This completely contradicts the public statement she gave when the blame was being placed on the State Department and by proxy her. And the other interesting email was an exchange between herself and the Egyptian Prime Minister, Hisham Kandil, who she told, quote, "We know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest." And this is where one of Trump's top 3 nicknames spawned from, Crooked Hillary. To any lesser woman, this would have been political homicide. But this is the Hill Dog that we're talking about. And Hill Dogs don't die. As I said, now cleared of all charges, she turned her talons to the main event against Donald Trump. September 26, 2016. The first of 3 debates between Trump and the Hill Dog. There were more debates in general, but this is the first of the 3 main ones. Watching this first debate back, it's a lot more tame than the media had me believing. The framing I always had in my head is Trump made these debates, particularly with Hillary, into these like reality show style drama content things. But this first one, even compared to the GOP debates, was pretty debate-like. Like, they both didn't really go too deep into personal attacks and hit their talking points on their policies. They talked about tariffs. They argued over NAFTA, which is a free trade agreement between the US, Canada, and Mexico.
The kinds of things that will really boost the economy. Broad-based, inclusive growth is what we need in America, not more advantages for people at the very top.
Typical politician, all talk, no action, sounds good, doesn't work, never going to happen. Our country is suffering because people like Secretary Clinton have made such bad decisions in terms of our jobs and in terms of what's going on.
When we start getting into the meat of the debate, Trump is pressed for not publicly releasing his tax returns. For the uninformed, it is customary for all presidential candidates to release their tax returns publicly so they can be independently audited to make sure they aren't bending the rules or doing something that isn't in the interest of the American people. I'm not going to sweep for Trump on this one. He obviously had stuff he wanted to hide. When asked about this by the moderator, he tries to shift and deflect by saying he'll release them when Hillary releases her emails.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns. It's not negotiable. No, let her release the email. Why did she delete 33,000?
Well, I'll let her.
Trump's stance on Obama's birth certificate comes up. He points out that Hillary also partook in the conspiracy, which she denies, and she also lays the seeds for something that will be relevant very shortly. Trump's alleged connection to Russia.
Started his political activity based on this racist lie that our first black president was not an American citizen. And the Russians need to understand that. I think they've been treating it as almost a probing. How far would we go? How much would we do? And that's why I was so shocked when Donald publicly invited Putin to hack into Americans. That is just unacceptable.
In case you missed it, she doesn't outright state Trump colluded with Russia to hack her email server and the Gmail of her staffer John Podesta, but she did heavily imply that he was behind it. Credit where credit is due. The Hill Dog mauled Donald on this one, and the polls reflected that too. After the first debate, things were leaning in her favor. Truthfully, I would assume this was due to Trump's low energy performance. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't like on Xanax low energy. He definitely did bully her a little, but he didn't feel like he was running at 100%. She got the better of him on many exchanges, and it seems to have toned down his bullying tactics by like 25%-ish. And I also believe this helped feed into this narrative that was surrounding his campaign. There was a discussion being had where people felt like Trump didn't actually want to be president, almost like he started running as a middle finger to Obama for clowning him at the Correspondence Dinner, which he kind of did. And then he went up in the GOP debates and smashed his opponents with no research, preparation, or effort involved because they are dorks and he is funny. But by the time he got to Hillary, the meme kind of died and he ran out of steam because he never wanted the job in the first place. This was a conversation being had at office water coolers, at backyard barbecues, all the mainstream news channels. Director/gay loser Michael Moore had made this claim in an article for The Guardian. South Park used this narrative in one of their episodes when Mr. Garrison ran for president as like the proverbial Trump character. Luckily for Trump, 2 days before the second of 3 debates came the election cycle's October surprise.
So is Hillary Clinton totally in the clear with the FBI or Congress?
The 2016 elections were no different because on the 7th, just 2 days before the second debate, WikiLeaks, which is a nonprofit government whistleblower website run by Julian Assange, published around 20,000 of John Podesta's emails. A bunch of interesting things were leaked to the public through this data dump, including proof that the DNC screwed over Bernie Sanders in the Democrat primaries.
We learned today from former Democratic National Committee Chairwoman Donna Brazile that the Clinton campaign, in her view, did rig the presidential nominating process by entering into an agreement to control day-to-day operations at the DNC. The Clinton campaign controlling the party's staffing, strategy, finances, communications, and that agreement was entered into in August 2015, a year before she defeated Senator Bernie Sanders. This must shock you.
Hillary had been given an advance copy of what the audience questions were going to be in the debates by the moderator and CNN pundit Donna Brazile. This resulted in not only Donna's resignation, but also the resignation of DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Private speeches she had given to financial institutions like Goldman Sachs leaked as well. This was damning because, for example, in a 2013 speech, Hillary told a room of racially ambiguous bankers that she had a, quote, public and private position on certain political issues, effectively saying that lying to the public is necessary to navigate the political system. An example of that, for instance, was her private support of open borders policies when she's talking to bankers, while publicly denouncing it. There were emails that indicated her and her husband's charity, the Clinton Foundation, was actually being used to funnel funds to support her political campaign. This is pretty messy, but there's a thread that alleges that there is a $12 million contribution from the King of Morocco. There's no paper trail on that, but it does imply that there may have been a quid pro quo. Apparently, the Qatari government sent Bill Clinton a $1 million birthday gift through this foundation, which paired with another email thread of leaked Hillary speeches she gave privately to financial institutions. She acknowledges that Saudi Arabia and Qatar are funding ISIS, who the US is actively combating. The Pizzagate conspiracy also spawned from these Podesta email leaks. Well, that's a whole video unto itself. This is a Kanye DEFCON 3 level scandal. A lot of things the Democrats didn't want to be made public now are. In an admittedly brilliant political maneuver, around an hour before all the damning evidence of corruption was supposed to hang over Hillary's head, an old video just so happened to find its way into the media cycle.
I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and f her. She was married.
That's huge news there.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took out furniture. I moved on her like a but I couldn't get there. And she was married. Then all of a sudden I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look.
She's your girl's hot as shit. In the purple.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, the Donald is good.
Whoa.
Oh, my man. Wait, you gotta look at me when you get out of your
Whoever sets this up.
That is very
Will you give me the thumbs
Look
up?
at you. You are a
You gotta put the thumbs up. You gotta get the thumbs up. Can't be too happy.
Else off first? Yeah, let me.
It's very fun.
You gotta give me the thumbs up.
All right, you and I will walk down.
Oh my God.
Maybe it's a different one.
Better not be the publicist. No, it's her.
Yeah, that's her, with the gold. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
Yes, the salacious, feminist activating, grab him by the pussy clip, which was a hot mic moment Trump thought he was having in private, was dug up and made the main news story less than an hour before WikiLeaks published evidence Hillary Clinton pushed out Bernie through deceptive and immoral means, admitting to straight up lying to the public's face while reserving her true policies to be shared with racially nondescript bankers, potentially using charity money for personal gain and to fund her political campaign, with some of the donors being foreign governments, and most likely trafficking children in the basement of pizza restaurants. Again, I don't like Hillary, I have a bias against her, but if putting out the grab him by the pussy video an hour before all this leaks isn't considered a work of art, I don't know what is. So 2 days later, as every bleeding heart liberal in the Western world is having a meltdown about Donald Trump saying when you're rich and famous, sluts will catapult themselves at you, and you can basically do whatever you want with them, which is a universal truth that everybody knows. Also, I thought we weren't supposed to shame sluts anymore because sex work is real work, but whatevs. So 2 days later, every bleeding heart liberal in the Western world is having a meltdown about Donald Trump saying that when you're rich and famous, sluts will catapult themselves at you, and you can basically do whatever you want with them. And this leads us to October 9th, the second debate. Why don't we take a look at the very first topic?
You called what you said locker room banter. You described kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault. You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said. This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly, I'm not proud of it. But this is locker room talk. You know, when we have a world where you have ISIS chopping off heads, where you have, and frankly, drowning people in steel cages.
There was clearly an agenda by NBC to help Hillary secure the victory by front-loading this tabloid-like topic. Further evidence of that is when it's also the second topic.
Jeff from Ohio asks on Facebook, Trump says the campaign has changed him. When did that happen? So, Mr. Trump, let me add to that. When you walked off that bus at age 59, were you a different man, or did that behavior continue until just recently?
Another major talking point during this debate is Russia, Russia, Russia. This isn't the first time she tried to tie Trump to Russian collusion, and this debate is definitely not the peak of those allegations. But with the email leaks, she needed an armory full of weapons to attack Trump with to get the heat off of her. The group who claimed to have been responsible for the Podesta email leaks was a group called Fancy Bear, also known as APT28. Through a spear phishing attack, they managed to take control of John Podesta's Gmail account and publish their findings online. What's important to know about Fancy Bear is that they were based in Russia. This isn't 100% confirmed, but CrowdStrike, a cybersecurity firm, claims that Fancy Bear is actually working for GRU, a Russian special forces unit who also acts as a military intelligence agency. Think CIA, but communist. To further back up this claim in 2018, an indictment by the United States Special Counsel identified Fancy Bear as GRU Unit 26165. Hillary used this rumor to fuel the narrative that Fancy Bear was attacking Democrat politicians at the behest of Donald Trump because he's a Russian asset. To see where we are just 48 hours after this major scandal it's impressive. But do you want to know what's even more impressive than that? After losing the first debate, Donald Trump came prepared. He pivots the conversation about the grab him by the pussy clip into Hillary's own husbando being a renowned pussy hound.
If you look at Bill Clinton, far worse, minor words, and his was action. His was what he's done to women. There's never been anybody in the history of politics in this nation that's been so abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women and attacked them viciously. 4 of them are here tonight. One of the women who is a wonderful woman, at 12 years old, was raped at 12. Her client, she represented, got him off, and she's seen laughing on 2 separate occasions, laughing at the girl who was raped. Kathy Shelton, that young woman, is here with us tonight.
And like the counter hitting 0 at the Royal Rumble, he brings out Kathy Sheldon to lay the smackdown on the Clintons' candy asses. Now, I don't know if this was intentional or if it was just like a happy circumstance, but as he transitioned from talking about Bill into Kathy Sheldon, the camera stays on Bill, which if you don't know who Kathy is, and given Bill's track record, it could imply that Bill sexually assaulted her as a child, which is untrue, to be clear. Kathy was allegedly raped by a man, Thomas Alfred Taylor, who was defended by a 20-something-year-old Hillary Rodham in her very first case. As part of her defense, she signed a sworn affidavit that she was seeking a psychiatric evaluation of the 12-year-old abuse victim, allegedly, Kathy Shelton, claiming she was emotionally unstable and was actually sexually aroused by older men and had made up the accusations about her client. She managed to strike a deal, downgrading the charges, and as a result, Kathy has since held a grudge against Hillary, who she felt took advantage of her, a 12-year-old girl at the time, and prevented justice from being served. There's even a leaked audio clip of Hillary kind of laughing about the case behind closed doors.
The story was mostly forgotten until in 2014, audio emerged of Clinton talking about the case with an Arkansas journalist back in the 1980s. Listen to her laugh describing the moment she delivered her forensic expert's findings to the prosecutor.
I handed it to Bailey Gibson. I said, "Rob, this guy's ready to come from New York for this miscarriage of justice." I didn't take the test. I had to take a polygraph, which he passed, which forever destroyed my faith in polygraphs. But you know what was sad about it was that the prosecutors had evidence.
In my opinion. And all you have to do is take a look at WikiLeaks and just see what they said about Bernie Sanders and see what Deborah Wasserman Schultz had in mind, because Bernie Sanders, between superdelegates and Deborah Wasserman Schultz, he never had a chance. And I was so surprised to see him sign on with the devil. And I'll tell you what, I didn't think I'd say this, but I'm going to say it. And I hate to say it. But if I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it. And we're going to have a special prosecutor. In my opinion, the people that have been long-term workers at the FBI are furious. There has never been anything like this, where emails and you get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails. People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done. And it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on that. I'm going to let you talk about emails.
Because everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised.
Really?
In the first debate, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
This right here is probably the line of the entire campaign. I don't believe this won him the presidency single-handedly, but I think it encapsulates why he did win. Hillary tried to respond, but the reply is weak, as Trump seems to be winning this handicap match. Trump hands down lost the first debate, but came back to dominate in the second. His responses felt strong and returned to form, while Hillary's felt like empty political statements that she didn't really believe in, which does mirror her recently leaked comments about having both private and public policy positions. I think this exchange pretty well sums up the vibe of the second debate. Also, Ken Bone was in this one. Remember when he was a meme for a week in October of 2016? Despite all of the scandals and her poor performance, Hillary managed to squeak out a victory in the polls. This led to the third and final debate on October 19th. The last chance for the two to verbally spar against each other before the vote. For a good chunk of this debate is actually fairly normal. Trump, like in the first debate, was more subdued. Hillary isn't being as nasty as she tried to in the second. We're 1 for 1 on the go-home shows, so maybe they were playing things a little more cautiously. Part of this more serious tone was the crowd also was not allowed to cheer or boo, because for Trump, that's like the blood of hot Catholic virgins to a 300-year-old but still sexy vampire. And this is where things really get off the rails. The moderator presses Hillary about all of the emails that leaked out online. He asked her about donors to her charity, the Clinton Foundation. This isn't something I've mentioned, but in 2010, there was a pretty devastating earthquake in Haiti that did a lot of damage to the country's infrastructure. Bill Clinton was appointed co-chair of the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission at the behest of the UN. Through the leaked emails, it showed that people who made large donations to the Clinton Foundation were given big development project contracts in the ruined country. This obviously smells of corruption, and the term pay for play was being thrown around by the media, as in you pay buku bucks to the Clinton Foundation, and somewhere down the line, like a natural disaster in Haiti, you get lucrative UN construction and humanitarian aid contracts. But like everything in politics, there is no way to 100% prove the corruption, and even if you do, Hillary then uses that time she had spent in Haiti, where she learned voodoo, to put your name on a magical list, and the next thing you know, uh-oh, you're stabbed in a random robbery where the criminal is never found. Or, uh-oh, the brakes on your car miraculously stop working and you die in a fiery car crash. Or, uh-oh, all the cameras in the prison happen to go off and you hang yourself with bed sheets. With all that being said, Hillary handily rejects all the allegations. The last few notable things here is Trump is still refusing to make his tax returns public, which clearly means he was hiding something. Hillary claims that this is his Russia ties.
I guess we'll never know.
The moderator asked Trump if he'd concede the election if he loses, and he gives a non-answer. Foreshadowing much? Trump makes the accusation that the only reason the FBI found Hillary innocent in the email scandal is that Bill had taken a meeting with the Attorney General on a tarmac in Arizona. The counterclaim that the Clintons make is that it just so happens that Bill and the Attorney General flew their planes into the same private airport at the same time and bumped into each other, but the conversation had nothing to do with business and it was just two friends catching up, which means Bill pulled strings and made sure that Hillary was innocent. And that's pretty much it. I'd say that Trump objectively edged out the victory in the third one. Hillary did a lot of deflecting and Trump seemed more on point, but I think both of them did actually make some good points. The public disagreed with me though and gave a slight victory to Hillary in the polls. A little over a week later, James Comey of the FBI announces a new investigation into Hillary's emails. After new evidence was found, this resulted in a sizable dip in the polls, which I found odd that they wouldn't wait till after the elections to announce this, but whatevs. But 2 days before the election, James Comey once again comes out and declares Hillary to be totally innocent. November 8th, Election Day. Initial predictions showed Clinton to win 3-1, but the race ended up much closer than expected. The election is called at 7 a.m. the following day. Donald J. Trump wins the election, becoming the 45th president-elect with 304 electoral seats to Hillary's 227. But he loses the popular vote. Liberals acknowledged their loss and, in a gesture of good sportsmanship, congratulated MAGA on their victory. The streets were in chaos. This marked the beginning of the widening political divide that struck America for 8 years. The liberals were in complete shock immediately following the election. His win broke the narrative that the media had been feeding them for the last year. Polling data pointed to a Hillary victory. Everyone was treating Trump like a buffoon who had zero shot at victory. Like you had to be stupid for even entertaining the idea that regular humans would vote for him. Because the only people who would vote for him are 80 IQ, Christian, racist rednecks. Hillary did not address her party the night of the loss. She'd make her concession speech a day later. She seemed emotionally shaky in the speech, but I doubt she possesses the capacity to produce human emotions. In the speech, she does acknowledge a peaceful transfer of power, a customary gesture from the losing team as a way to protect the legitimacy of the electoral system. But in hindsight, this was a statement she made because she had to, and not because she wanted to, as she would make a 180 on this position in the following months and years. In a 2019 CBS interview, she'd say, quote, "No, it doesn't kill me because he knows he's an illegitimate president. I believe he understands the many varying tactics they used, from voter suppression and voter purging to hacking the false stories. He knows that. There was just a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out like it did." January 6th the following year. As per the custom, The electoral votes were formally counted, and the president of the Senate, Joe Biden, announced the election results. A few weeks later, on January 20th, Donald Trump was officially sworn in the 45th president of the United States of America. Now, officially sitting upon the throne of swords, King Trump's battle with the deep state had just begun.
For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost.
I understood that I could be fired by a president for any reason or for no reason at all.
We will build a great wall along the southern border.
But there's no question that today's Republican Party is driven and intimidated by MAGA extremists.
There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, and you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.